If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
In the market for new or used guns, look no further than Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun. Whether you want to buy, sell, or trade, we got you covered. While you're here, check out our large selection of jewelry. We offer gold, silver, diamond, and beautiful estate jewelry. Looking for electronics? We have almost anything you can think of. We always carry new and used guns, so come here first and shop with a local business you can trust. Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun, serving you for over 25 years. 443-1668, 2552 Sunset Avenue, Rocky Mount.
Welcome to the K-File.
Shut up, Sandra.
No, we're just having some really good discussion.
Yeah.
I told Linda we need to have a night show when the K-Files is not on. The ratings would go through the roof.
Yeah. We talk politics.
Oh boy, that would be talking politics.
I would use the facts, and then you could use your stuff.
That's right.
All right, folks.
Okay, this is the K-File.
It is.
And let's thank our sponsors.
You do that.
Carolina Wiring.
Yes.
Carolina Wiring, Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun, and Statewide Insurance Group.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
for sticking with us, being with us through this great ride that we've had. What are we talking about today? We're going to talk about Linda Lawrence again?
Yes, we have Angela Height will be here in the second segment. We got her lovely picture right there. But
okay.
You'll have her in the flesh. Well, the TV people won't. They'll have her in video, I guess.
That's right.
But she's a victims' rights advocate. Did I get that right? Is that good enough? Okay. She's going to talk about the Racial Justice Act. And we both had similar experiences with that thing, and it is not what it sounds like.
Really?
We'll get into all that next segment.
That's interesting.
Right now, continue talking about Linda Lawrence. You know, she went missing in Rocky Mount in 1996. Most people know her as the lady who left the pool.
The 45 years old.
Right.
She's a pretty lady.
She is. And, the funny thing about her is as the family started... Yeah, it was, because she's long dead. As the family started giving me pictures and everything, she looks different in all of her pictures, you know? Yeah, I mean, like, and I don't mean like as time went by. I mean, just like pictures of the same time period. She's one of those people that just look different all the time. So I had to make sure some of those pictures were her, because I was like, I wasn't sure.
Well, she was an addict, so some of those pictures have been when she was using
it could have been, But okay, so she went missing Rocky Mount in 1996, right? But I want to talk about another case right now, because this one is going to help inform that case. That's what I'm doing here. I'm more than a pretty face, believe it or not. I actually know stuff.
Okay.
All right. So we want to talk about Karen Boster. Okay, she was from Perquimans County. That's her right there.
Wow.
She's been missing since May 30th, 2015. Right? She was captured on video at Food Line in Edmonton. That's up there. It's northeast North Carolina, like up almost on the Virginia line, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Perquimans and Dare County and all those counties up there. So there she is, video at Food Line. That's the last time anybody's ever seen her, right? So, so she's at Food Line that day. The very next day, her card was used at a gas station.
Right.
Right? So May 30th, she's at Food Line using that card. The next day, May 31st, the card is used at a gas station outside of town, right? Okay, so the card was used by a gentleman named Thomas Edward White, this man. He's a friend of Karen's. They've known each other for a little while, right?
Can I stop right there and interject something?
Yes, please.
What is the percentage, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I would like to ask law enforcement, what is the percentage of people, of murders, that the person
knows the person who killed him?
Yes.
Almost all of them.
Just about all.
Yeah, this myth of like, there was a report that came out a few years ago that there's like 5,000 serial killers operating in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really kind of a myth. I mean, almost everyone is murdered by someone they know. Right. Now there are exceptions to that. I mean, obviously, I mean, there's
robbery and things like that.
Right, and then there's women getting picked up, getting kidnapped, but
the person.
But almost everybody is when it's murdered by somebody they knew. Now, like I said, there are exceptions to that. We've talked about some of them on the show. I mean, there is.
Do not trust anyone.
Right. Okay. Good question. So, White told the police that he found that card on his front porch. So he said, "Hey, there's a credit."
Come on.
Well, he failed a lie detector test, right, according to the sheriff's office up there. So he failed a lie detector test. All right. In 2017. Governor Cooper offered a $5,000 reward in the case. That's when I got into it. I was working at the Telegram at the time. The Telegram is a sister newspaper to the one up in Elizabeth City.
Yes.
And so, I began to write about this case then. In April of this year, right, 5 years after this gentleman used Karen Boster's credit card at the gas station, he was convicted of obtaining property by false pretense. Took him 5 years, right? Wow. Mr. White he's a petty criminal. He's got a bunch of convictions like shoplifting and possession of stolen goods and stuff like that, right? Wow. So, I mean, maybe he did pick up. You know what I mean? It's most people, they see their friend's credit card on the front porch, they give it back to the friend, But if he's got quite a few years of shoplifting and stuff like that. So, the question is, did he graduate to murder, right? The family strongly believes that. There's a private detective that I worked with a couple times on that. He strongly believes that it's him. Mr. White says it's not him, right?
Well, naturally.
The sheriff's office has said that they don't believe that he was the culprit, but that they do think he knows what happened.
That he knows. Right,
that he was either there or he has intimate knowledge of what happened. He won't say, So why am I telling this, right? This obviously if somebody knows something about Karen Boster's case, we want them to call that number, yes. Call the hotline. But this case is very, very, very similar to Linda Lawrence's case in one particular thing, okay? Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we want people, if they know anything about this case, You know, Elizabeth City's not that far away. You know, if you know something about this case, give a call for Karen Boster's family, and I know them, and my thoughts are with them. They've been suffering for this for 5 years.
Right.
Linda Lawrence been missing since 1996. That's a lot longer. The reason that I'm talking about Karen's case is because, and this is the first time this has ever been reported before, right? Here you go, right here. It's never been said before by anybody. After Linda disappeared, within days, her credit card was used in Raleigh by a known local drug dealer, right? This is according to a law enforcement officer who worked on that case. I've talked with him. Wow. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say the drug dealer's name, pending legal developments, yes. Right? But, you know, we're always after answers on this show, but sometimes it's something you got to start with the right questions.
Right.
Right. So I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago. We took a Thanksgiving break.
Right.
But we talked about the reluctance of prosecutors.
Absolutely.
To go after, they want a grand slam or they shy away from cases, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's what happened in the Karen Boster case. You know, there was, if they think that this fella knows something, there's a lot more they could pursue than obtaining property by false pretense and taking 5 years to do it. Of course, there's never been any arrest or any charges in Linda Lawrence's case, even though they had viable suspect in this guy that used her credit card. And we see even in Karen Boster's case, even if murder is not pursued, at least the guy got some kind of charge out of this whole situation, right? Right. So the question is, and I'm sure Linda's daughter and her family's probably asking themselves right now, you know,
why have we not pursued
right.
the guy with the credit card?
Exactly. So, you know, I mean, you know, what does it mean? I mean, I've worked at newspapers all over North Carolina, right? I've worked with sheriffs. There's different levels of professionalism when it comes to sheriffs. We got Keystone here, who's a retired highway patrolman, right? I worked with a guy that was a farmer with no law enforcement experience whatsoever, mm-hmm. and got elected into the role. You know, you don't have to have any law enforcement experience to be sheriff in North Carolina.
Right.
He did a pretty decent job at it, really. When it comes to DAs, though, I mean, they're all attorneys, right? Obviously, you don't get to be DA without being an attorney.
Definitely.
Some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats. I've worked with all of them, right? Different ones over the years. The one thing they all have in common is, I mean, it is an elected position.
Right.
The one thing that they all have in common is they're all cautious to pursue cases that aren't easily, that the jury doesn't easily. Somebody's burning my phone up. They don't like what I'm saying. I don't care. They're reluctant to prosecute cases that could be prosecuted.
I cannot tell you how many times I have talked to law enforcement. I know a lot of law enforcement people. How much, I cannot tell you the level of frustration that they have at the DA's office.
They do.
Because they risk their life.
Right.
Going out there and arresting, and guess what?
Yeah,
they're on the street the next day.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, and also, I mean, like in a capital murder in a murder case, you're going to get the DA on board as soon as possible. So a lot of times they're not even going to, you know, the arrest never comes because they know that if the DA is not going to prosecute the case, what's the point of making the arrest?
Why?
So
not.
That sheriff that was
get somebody off the street.
That sheriff that was a former, he was a common sense kind of guy, and he wanted to bring a lot of these cases to a grand jury and let the grand jury decide whether there was enough evidence to move forward. And then if there was, then that would kind of put the onus on the DA. Of course, he never did that. So anyway. So that's where we're at. so far in Linda Lawrence's case. Now,
so now we know that
there was a suspect.
Man used her credit card in Raleigh.
Right. That's according.
Wow,
that's according to
huge.
a retired law enforcement officer who asked not to be identified.
Well, we won't identify him.
All right.
We're just glad we got the information.
Well, here's part 2 of that. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about Linda's case, and we're going to get into some dark secrets that involve the police department. So it's not always.
This is getting.
I know it's not always the DA's office that is reluctant sometimes.
Okay.
So
Well,
yeah, we'll see how much
make sure you
how much trouble.
continue to watch.
I know. See how much trouble I can get in between now and next week. We have a meeting this afternoon.
Yes, we do.
So the Team Cold Case we're talking about, folks. That's the entity that's behind the reward money on the show.
Yes, that is our nonprofit group.
Right.
406-6736 is the hotline. Do not forget, people. It is completely anonymous.
And folks, Linda's family now just want to know where her body is.
Well, sure.
They don't even care about prosecution anymore. They just want to be able to bury their mother and their daughter. Her mother's 98 years old, and she's going to be dead pretty soon, and she really would like to find out where her daughter is before she goes.
Wow.
So when we be back, we will come back after the commercial. We'll have Angela here, and she will straighten us out on the Racial Justice Act.
Okay, we'll be right back.
If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
In the market for new or used guns, look no further than Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun. Whether you want to buy, sell, or trade, we got you covered. While you're here, check out our large selection of jewelry. We offer gold, silver, diamond, and beautiful estate jewelry. Looking for electronics? We have almost anything you can think of. We always carry new and used guns, so come here first and shop with a local business you can trust. Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun, serving you for over 25 years. 443-1668, 2552 Sunset Avenue, Rocky Mount.
Hello, folks. This is Angela Height. She is a victim's right advocate, and we're going to get into that in just a second. I wanted to mention something. Fighting Crime, who will be on the show next week, folks. She will come out of her groundhog hole, and you will be able to see her in the flesh. She texted me and reminded me that Stephen McCurry, who disappeared earlier this year, I think back in January, his daughter used his credit card after he was gone, and they've charged her with that. So I mean, this is kind of a thing that happens a lot. So anyway, Angela, you're here to talk about the Racial Justice Act.
Absolutely.
I want to give my experience with it really shortly, and then I want to give, because folks need to hear what you had to say about the Racial Justice Act, because it's a very confusing, misleading, or possibly deceptive term,
yes,
I think.
Yes.
Okay, so Marcus Douglas Jones Sr. used a 12-gauge shotgun to murder his wife and 14-year-old stepson in 2000, the year 2000. In 2010, while on death row, Jones filed for the Racial Justice Act to commute his death sentence to life in prison. I was there working in Onslow County at the time when that happened. Onslow County District Attorney Dewey Hudson, he said he told me he didn't know how Jones could file for the Racial Justice Act request because Jones was white, his wife was white, his little boy were white. So the suspect, the convicted death row inmate, was white. The wife and the son, victims, they were white. And I'm gonna add to that the judge was white, the prosecutor was white, both defense attorneys were white, and the jury was made up of 11 white folks and 1 black person, right? Mm-hmm. So this white man who killed 2 white people and had a white judge, a white prosecutor, 2 defense attorneys, 11 white jurors, he filed for the Racial Justice Act, and fortunately, before anything could happen in his case, he died of natural causes in prison. Couldn't think of a better thing. I don't think anybody's mourning Mr. Jones today. But as a reporter, I was like, well, you know, what's going on? How can this thing even be like? I mean, why? How is this the Racial Justice Act when it's as messed up as this is? So now it's your turn.
That's the question that everybody thinks when they first hear about the Racial Justice Act. They think, wait a minute, this is supposed to be with, you know, what we're hearing in the news right now about racial equality, those types of things. So let me tell you about the original bill. The original bill was based upon statistics alone. Michigan State University came out with this. And so it had nothing to do with your race. It has nothing to do with the lawyer's race. It has everything to do with statistics and the jury. So if you think about that, it's still ill-named.
Right.
So it's about how many people were struck down. So that jury makeup in that case that you were just talking about had 11 white jurors and 1 black juror. And it all depends, the statistics were saying that more African Americans and people that were not Caucasian were being struck down from being on juries. And so that's where it came about. It doesn't matter if the prosecutor struck them down or the defendant struck them down. You could be the defense lawyer for this murderer and struck down every black juror, and you can still apply for the Racial Justice Act saying that the jury wasn't fair.
Wow.
That's the key that people don't understand. And even if you look at the first 4 cases that were tried under the Racial Justice Act, give you a little history of it. The bill was made. All 170 plus or minus people that were on death row filed for it. It didn't matter whether you thought you were guilty or not guilty. Applying for the Racial Justice Act, you said you had to be guilty, number 1. So none of these guys are saying that they were not guilty. Number 2, within that, there was only 4 people, that were tried when it was still standing. The law was still standing. It was all done in Fayetteville, and it was 3 black gentlemen and 1 Indian woman, and they were tried at the same time. So not each case was heard individually.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah. So the judge, his name was Gregory Weeks in Fayetteville. He's now retired. Tried them all at the same time and ruled one ruling for those 4 cases, which I don't think anybody who's studied law or just a normal citizen would look at that and go, there's something wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if you look at it, one was a black man who killed a black man, one was a black gentleman who killed a white man, and then the Indian woman killed, she was you may know the term better than I, the mother of the gang, the leader of the,
right.
And she was going to kill her whitey. I mean, that's on document. Wow. And she killed several people. So these 4 cases were ruled at one time. So then once those were ruled, their sentences were commuted from life with death to life without parole.
Wasn't one of those a cop killer?
Yes. So the Golphin brothers killed Ed Lowry and Hancock. And they are still, the Lowry family is still in Cumberland County. I keep in touch with them regularly, talked to them last week.
Right. And that was your involvement in all of this, right?
Yes.
You dealt with the families.
Yes, correct.
The victims' families.
Correct. And that's
not an easy thing to do.
No, and it's funny, I think God kind of laid the path out for that, because Ed Lowry, who's the brother, they don't normally talk to media, and for some reason Ed and I found each other in a hallway and just started talking, and that's how it became. Do we?
No,
we don't need to take that.
Yeah, we will. We'll get to them. Okay. I want to hear what you got to say.
And so
hang on, folks.
And so he and I started talking, and that's how it became, because I mean, you know this as a journalist, most victims' families don't trust the media.
Right.
And so Ed and I became.
Well, most people, nobody trusts the media.
Nobody trusts the media.
I don't trust the media.
Yeah. And so he and I became very good friends. And so there was 4 or 5 other families that we went through the legislature. Senator Goolsby out of Wilmington, he's no longer in the state legislature, but he was very instrumental in repealing the Racial Justice Act. And so we ended up repealing it. The Supreme Court did not hold it up, and it's gone. If you know anything about law, it bounces all around.
I know a little bit about it. I've gotten speeding tickets and went to court for those.
But in murder cases with DAs and so on and so forth, it's actually very different. But it's bounced around in the courts. The Supreme Court finally said what Judge Weeks in Cumberland County ruled, that it was, I don't know the exact term, but it wasn't valid. Let's just say that.
Right.
So they went back down to the lower courts. So their sentences, they went back from life without parole back to death row.
Oh, good.
But
I like that.
it's not over. And so then they said it had to be heard at the lower. Well, then the Supreme Court, somehow or another, there's 4 or 5 other steps in this, said that each case was valid. All 100.
We're talking about the state or the
state?
State. Okay.
State. It never went over to federal because this is a state law.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now, in the long term, there's been several other. Each 170 case will be heard again, and several other.
126 because Mr. Jones died.
Yeah, and that depends on, natural causes of death. Some of them have had other appeals processes. So those types of things, it's back to where each case is going.
Well, I mean, we don't execute anybody anyway, right?
We haven't since 2007.
Yeah, so I mean, this seems like a lot of wasted legislation and litigation and all that for something that we don't do enough of anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's death penalty is a very hard subject. Some people, I really believe in it. Some people don't. You will never win for death penalty,
and it's not a partisan thing either. I mean, it seems like I think most Republicans like the death penalty or whatever. I know some that don't.
Right, agreed.
I'm a Democrat. I love when they execute people. I mean, we need to do that a whole lot more. When you've seen the things that I've seen and been to the crime scenes and dealt with victims' families like you have, I mean, it's there's a little bit of retribution in there, but I mean, it's sometimes it's just good old-fashioned justice and revenge, and I think I got no problem with it.
It's hard.
Sandra, you got a problem with it?
Not at all.
Not at all. She said no.
It's hard. I have worked with victims' families. And so it's very hard. There's a gentleman that has been a mentor to me and a friend as well, and his son was murdered in the 80s. And he was at the legislature every Wednesday fighting for victims' rights. He started the North Carolina Crime Victims Compensation, which right now, he was the original chairman and was for 25 years. I'm the vice chairman of that right now. But his son was murdered in the 80s. The gentleman that murdered his son was executed in the 90s. And
well, at least he got that. Most people don't get
but
anything.
He saw the execution.
Yeah.
This gentleman fought for the right for the victims' families to see the execution, because it used to be that the victims' families had no right in that execution. And so hearing his story, and he saw a gentleman die. You and I both know when you see somebody die, that changes you. Regardless if it was natural causes, whether it was murder, that's going to change you. And there's some healing and there's some therapy that needs to take place regardless of who you are after the fact. Should we check on him?
No. Let me see. Whoa, General, call back in the third segment, please. So I'll definitely take your call at the top of the third segment, General. Just a few more minutes.
And so it's a very interesting. And as I'm telling you all of this, the Lowry case was in the 90s in Fayetteville. If you go down to the bridge, you'll see the bridge for him and Hathcock. Hathcock's family, there's no living relatives anymore, so I kind of say that I'll be his relative to fight for him, who was killed in that case. This has been in the 90s, and there's still no closure. And there was 2 brothers. So one was 17 at the time of the murder, and one was over the age of 18, which is the one we're talking about in the Racial Justice Act. they're still in the court system for the 17-year-old, who was 17 at the time. One, because he was ruled deaf to be executed as well. But then the national federal Supreme Court said you can't execute if you were under 18 at the time of the crime. Then his sentence was commuted to life without parole. And now they're saying if they were under 18 at the time of the crime, they can't have that sentence either. So they're still, what is this, 35 years later?
Yeah,
or 25 years later, and there's no closure. And I'm not saying that these gentlemen cases do need to be heard, but give some closure to these families.
Yeah, and at least I give North Carolina credit for one thing, and that is the life without parole. I mean, that was, that changed in what, like 93 or something, and
it structured sentences.
Yeah, and first degree murder has two punishments: life without parole or the death penalty in North Carolina. So it's at least someone who's convicted of first degree murder is not getting out of prison, barring some sort of legal loophole. Before 93. And actually, I write about the guys that come up for parole that killed someone before 93 or whatever. They're getting fewer and fewer. When I first got into this, there was a ton of them that were coming up for that in the early 2000s and everything. But they're starting to die off now.
Right.
So there's fewer and fewer people first degree murders released on parole every year because there's fewer and fewer of them prior to 93. So we will get to a point when they age out, we will get to a point where no first degree murderers are released. Well, and that'll be a nice thing.
A funny thing about that is even some of those older cases, there was another policy issue I worked on with the district attorneys, was that at one point those guys were able to go home on the weekends. Yeah. And we found that out, said, here's your guys, and then we changed that. DPS didn't understand that there was a loophole. Because as you know, there's so many laws and those types of things.
Well, a lot of these, one thing I like to do is some of the stores that I worked on early in my career, I still go to the DOC website and find out where these folks are sometimes. Because like, Mr. Pittman, Antoine Pittman, who was convicted in relation to the Seven Bridges Road murders, he's pretty much at it like a work farm now. Yeah. So I mean, he's convicted of first degree murder, suspected in many other cases, but yet he's at a medium security. Yeah. If you behave in prison, they give you
the points. Yeah. I mean, 95% of the population that goes into prison will get out. Yeah. So you've got to look at rehabilitation as one of the first.
Oh yeah, I mean, folks, I'm all into that stuff. If you're shoplifting or whatever, we can work with you. Yeah. But I mean, murder is
it's a hard thing.
I'm not interested in rehabilitating any murders. Yeah. I mean, I have never murdered anybody.
That you know of, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that I got caught, right. But I mean, I'm just saying that what is the societal interest in rehabilitating a murderer? I mean, they murdered somebody, they gonna probably do it again. We got to go to the commercial because they open that's the magic door or whatever.
I figured there was
when they open the door,
opens,
it's wrap it up. Yeah, okay. So we'll be back in a few minutes, folks.
All right.
If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
In the market for new or used guns, look no further than Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun. Whether you want to buy, sell, or trade, we got you covered. While you're here, check out our large selection of jewelry. We offer gold, silver, diamond, and beautiful estate jewelry. Looking for electronics? We have almost anything you can think of. We always carry new and used guns, so come here first and shop with a local business you can trust. Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun, serving you for over 25 years. 443-1668, 2552 Sunset Avenue, Rocky Mount.
Welcome back, folks. Fred, I heard you mention Nicaragua.
Yes.
Did you or did you not run guns for Oliver North in 1983 in Nicaragua?
I assert my right to use the Fifth Amendment.
Okay. There you have it, folks. It has been verified. Fred ran guns. You know, Fred had been a weatherman, a high school teacher, a railroad cop. Did I leave anything out?
Gun runner.
Yeah. See, he
You need your own Netflix special.
He's
Sandra, we need a Netflix special on him, and we'll run it on Wig at first.
That's right. That's what we're trying that right now. All right. So let's go back over for lay people like myself.
Okay.
The Racial Justice Act, poorly named, it was what, like 2009 and 10, somewhere around there is when it started.
Yeah.
It looked at statistics, right, of juries, the racial makeup of jurors.
Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't matter the merit of the case, anything. I mean, any of the.
I think the intention of the Racial Justice Act absolutely was a good thing. The intention.
Well, a lot of stuff intentions start out.
Right. I think the intention was very good. You know, we hear of cases, you know, like the movie Just Mercy. That gentleman should have never even been tried, number one. Number two, never been tried of capital punishment or a capital case. And you know, you were talking in the first segment about, you know, do most people know the murderers that, or the people that murder them? You know, you look at the Golphin brothers and the Lowry and Hathcock case. They didn't know them. You know, the intent on that one with those, they were evil people.
Right.
There was
one of those cops. One was white, one was black.
No, those.
Right?
Oops, sorry, I'm pushing the table there. The highway patrolmen were white. There was another case. Do you remember me talking about the original 4 cases?
Right.
There was another case that it was a black gentleman, and forgive me, the name slipped my mind, but he murdered Roy Turner Jr., who was a Fayetteville police officer. That also happened in Cumberland County.
Right.
And he had a 6-week-old baby and was murdered by a black gentleman.
And he was black.
And he was black. So it was a separate case.
Right. So I mean, when I'm glad that you start, because I hadn't even thought about that. When you started off the show, you said that when you hear Racial Justice Act, you think George Floyd, you think
Trayvon Martin.
Right. You think about what's going on now.
Yes.
But this was nothing. This was.
I remember being at the legislature when we were working on this, because More Mondays was going on at that time, and somebody said the Racial Justice Act is for Trayvon Martin, and I'm like,
wow,
that has nothing to do with that case. You know, it wasn't.
Right.
And I understand the intention. You know, racial equality. I understand, but that it has nothing to do with that case.
Right. And like you said, in intention. It's probably a good thing to look at jury makeup.
Absolutely.
But to someone who's been adjudicated, is on death row, you know, I don't know. Sometimes
but it was based upon statistics, and it had nothing to do with even anything that you said as the district attorney or as a case. It was, statistics proved in this case, in the Michigan state study, that the statistics show that people could be made up against. You know, it had nothing to do with anything else.
If I know anything about lawmaking, those lawmakers probably cherry-picked that Michigan study. Come on, think about it. I mean, you know what I mean? You start off with, hey, let's make a law about something, and then you go out and find. I mean, I've written research papers. I know how it works. You got to.
One statistic.
That's right. You got to where you want to go, and you find out how to get there. Yes.
Okay. Let's see if we can get them now. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing?
Good, General. How you doing? I'm sorry I didn't answer you earlier. I wanted her to get out her spiel before we got to your spiel.
And you saw that I was trying to answer the phone.
And
so it wasn't
I
me.
slapped
It was
her hand.
him.
I slapped her hand. she's interested in the team, General. That's why she's trying to be nice to
I'm going to try to see if I can do something that clearly Angela understands, especially the last segment captured. But there's two things, because one of the comments you made was if a person's already convicted of murder, you indicated that, well, I don't necessarily want to rehabilitate him.
That's right. I do not.
Yeah, gotcha. But back up a second. One of the reasons why there's a Racial Justice Act in the minds of not the decision and all the guys that put it together, but first of all, it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. So if you're at a place like Rocky Mount and your jury isn't somewhere close to 50% makeup, that's an indicator that there's a little bit of an imbalance and not representative of your peers.
Well, in the case that I said, it was a white guy with white. He had 11 white jurors. That's pretty much.
His peers are still from the town.
But even if the district, I mean, even if the defense lawyer strikes down all of the African Americans, Hispanics, whatever that racial, the defense lawyer can still then apply for this, even though they made the statistics back.
And while you kind of disagree with it, but again, go back and remember there are a lot of cases that's on the books already from years past, and so this is trying to prevent that from occurring again.
Okay, we agree to disagree, General. If you're convicted of murder, I think you ought to be shot. What was your other point?
Well, I could agree if you did commit murder, yes, but the problem is convicted, especially older cases, have proven that they not necessarily were correct. And what that number is, I don't know. It's probably 1%. But remember, our laws were set up that it is better for one person guilty to get away than an innocent man to go to jail. And that's why some of those things are problem sets.
Okay.
So again, it's about trying to get people to be represented like the law set up. You know, two things. Something else Angela said earlier, where she said anybody should understand it because the law was really designed for the common man to understand. That's what the law was set up for.
Correct.
And so the punishments will be representative presented by the folks that are from and of that community. And so you got to kind of put all these pieces together, because otherwise we as innocents, we sit back sometimes because we look at it from the perspective of where we stand. We're saying we're not committing murder, we're not committing those crimes, and then we also trust that when somebody gets convicted, in general, we trust the law.
General, that's all straw man argument, because I don't think any of that stuff. I didn't say any of that stuff. What I said was if someone kills someone, they ought to be killed. We're not going to solve this in the next few minutes, and we're never going to agree on it probably. We agree on a lot of stuff, General. I love you, but I think that if somebody kills someone, they ought to be killed.
We actually agree on that. But the problem is that we don't always get it right.
No, I agree with that. We're never going to get it right. And
part of the Racial Justice Act, too, I don't know if you heard me say this, was that they are admitting guilt when they apply for this.
I caught that. That's why I said, you got to apply for that, you have to, first of all, say, yep, I did it.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, like I said, the intention of that, you know, we all would agree, the intention, there are cases absolutely that need to go be reviewed. That's why, thankfully, we have the appeals process.
And the Innocence Project, too,
and
which
the
does
Innocence
good
Project,
work.
Absolutely. And so, but I think this was ill-named, and some of the details really weren't thought out long-term.
Who was it that named it? Who was the person that named it?
I could say a few names, but I don't want to give somebody bad credit.
Right.
You know, if you go back, I would imagine if you go back and look at ncledge.net, which is the legislature website, you can go back and look and see who the original authors of the
homework assignment. Thank you.
I'll find it out. General, I thought you said you had two things.
Well, that was actually two parts. The first part was the Racial Justice Act and the indication of why it existed.
Yeah.
The second one is it goes to many of the people who had been convicted in previous times. So
sure. I mean, they used to like just hang people.
Of that piece, so if you put the two pieces together, then it makes some sense because it's a representation of supposed to be of your peers, because that's part of it. And peers don't mean just your people, just all your friends, but the people that are of co-equals in your community.
Well, I think we all agree that the intent behind it was good.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all agree on that justice should be fair, and I mean, everybody agrees with that. It's just the execution of this act was just poorly done. They could.
When people are trying to play cleanup,
right?
Trying to play cleanup because of some injustice of the past. That's all.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, look, hey, by the way, tell Frey he looks sharp today.
I will. Well, he heard you. He's in the back.
But I'll see you guys this afternoon, and
I want to meet you, so you and I need to get together soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate what you're doing, Angela. Appreciate your clarity.
Thanks for calling in, General. Keep me honest, please. I don't know which button it is.
This one.
Well, no. There we go.
There we go. I got it.
All right. So, I mean, he's right in that the intent of this law was to make things right.
Yes.
But you can't. I don't think you can make things right when you start with such a shaky foundation.
And and part of my hard thing, I have not.
It would have been better spent. I mean, I'll shut up after. It would have been better spent if they would have just looked at these 124 cases and found, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
looked at
absolutely.
them individually.
This one needs to be looked at. This
rather than
needs
just using some statistics to say, let's give every murderer a chance to
and try 4 of them at one time versus looking at each individual.
Yeah, that's weird right there. I've been covering murder cases for 20 years, and I've only seen one instance where there were co-defendants.
Yeah.
I mean, and there were a lot of times where there was more than one murderer,
or person at the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but they, but I've only seen once. So it's weird that they would do 4 cases at one time.
4 different murders.
Totally different people
at different times. The biggest thing too.
Why would they do that? Why do they do that?
I have my speculations, but I'm not gonna. The biggest thing I have a problem with is being a victim of crime. This is a traumatic event. Absolutely. You have somebody that you love murdered. You have whether it be property too, you've got to think about when somebody's murdered, what they do to the house to get the crime scene. And, a lot of the things like with the Crime Victims Compensation Commission, we look at medical bills. They're still stuck with medical bills. Cleaning up that house, funeral expenses, therapy if there was a child in a room. There's a case out of Moxville that I helped the family with. And it was a brother and sister. The sister had a small child. She was murdered by the boyfriend, and he shot the gun, murdered the sister, left her on the bed with the baby alive, then went after her brother with a hammer because the gun jammed. And, you look at this, there's cleanup. That brother is physically and mentally handicapped. I've met him. He has the best heart in the world, and I would do anything for him. But they're living every day as a trauma, and so 25 years, and even the murderers' mothers, these murderers, or convicted murderers, maybe I should say, they have mothers, they have sisters, they have brothers. Children, they need closure and be able to move on with their life. Am I going to be in prison forever? Am I going to be executed? Or am I going to get out? That's a lot of stress even for the families of the convicted murderers. So it's a hard thing. Give them closure. If we're talking about rehabilitating the offender, we also need to rehabilitate the victim.
Right, absolutely.
And you can't keep doing that by...
The magic door has opened.
Again.
So I will say that I have 5 children, and I love each one of them to death. But if they kill somebody, they got to go. So
there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, I mean we live in a world where there are no more individual responsibility over anything. Yeah. So, on that happy note, thank you very much for coming.
No problem.
Thank you for getting the general riled up.
I know.
And
I can't wait to meet him. I haven't met him in person.
And Sandra, thanks for sitting on the couch over there and doing nothing the whole show. And we will be back next week. Fighting Crime herself will be here. We will introduce her to the public and let her tell her story. It's extremely fascinating.
Awesome.
This lady from her laptop has helped solve over 700 crimes.
She's been fun. I haven't
including
met her
murders.
either. Yeah, but
she's amazing. So we're going to find out all about her next week. So thank y'all, and we will see you next time.
If you recently lost your job and your health coverage due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you think you may be eligible for Medicare, you probably have more questions than answers right now. Statewide Insurers Group, All Things Medicare, can help you with that. We can provide the guidance and the answers that you need to get the benefits you may be eligible for. Don't let this time of uncertainty jeopardize your eligibility for your Medicare benefits. Remember, relationships matter. Call Statewide Insurers Group today for the answers that you need now. 316-8166.
In the market for new or used guns, look no further than Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun. Whether you want to buy, sell, or trade, we got you covered. While you're here, check out our large selection of jewelry. We offer gold, silver, diamond, and beautiful estate jewelry. Looking for electronics? We have almost anything you can think of. We always carry new and used guns, so come here first and shop with a local business you can trust. Carolina Jewelry Pawn and Gun, serving you for over 25 years. 443-1668, 2552 Sunset Avenue, Rocky Mount.